questions? Seeing none. Looking to the agenda for this evening, there are 3 additions to the agenda, 2 of which are under in camera. Item K2, MGP hearing update, and item K3, application for judicial review of Bylaw 2016-19 pursuant to the Section 536 of the MGA. Both of those items are in camera to protect solicitor-client privilege. And also we're adding item E1, which is a date change for the MDP public hearing. Are there any other changes, additions? Then I will move the council approve the agenda as amended. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. We have an introduction tonight. Mr. Holder, step up to the podium. Welcome.
Your Worship and councillors, my name's Andrew Holder, the Chairman of the Board of the Museum, and I have the privilege this evening of introducing our new Director. But before I do, I just want to tell you how we got there. Back in November, we set up a little committee of 3 of us from the board of the museum, including Mr. Seeley, and we advertised across the country and apparently around the world, because we got 27 applications, one from Rome and one from Egypt, from Cairo, and our deadline was the 31st of December. And with the 27, we looked at those and we whittled it down to 7 people that seemed to fit the bill that we would like to have as our director. We interviewed those 7, either personally here or via Skype or by phone, and we whittled that down to 2. And the director that we eventually selected is here with us tonight. His name is Mr. Lachlan McIntosh, as I keep saying, a very good Ukrainian name. And he comes to us. He's a local man. He comes from Banff. He actually started working in Calgary, and I was intrigued to see this with Theatre Junction in Calgary. Some of you might know that the small theatre then. It's grown since and doing well. But he left there some time ago now, and he's worked for 14 years at the Banff Centre. And his credentials that really caught us was his marketing and his communication skills. He has all the rest that we need, management skills and managing a budget. But he just came across to the 3 of us on the committee as the number 1. The other person was pretty good too, but we plumped for Lachlan, and I'd like to introduce Lachlan McIntosh, who's going to have a couple of words with you. Thank you.
Welcome to council, Mr. McIntosh.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Andrew. I hadn't heard any of that before, so that was great to hear. I wish I could say I was from Rome. It's really great to be here. I'm excited to be working just across the hallway at the Canmore Museum. Really excited. And I just want to briefly share with you 3 priority items that the Canmore Museum is working on now and will be working on through 2016 that will benefit the town of Canmore. Number 1 is the Lamp House restoration, which is being championed by David Evans, who has Grassy Lakes Trail improvement, which is being championed by Vi Sanford and involves other key community board of directors. I'm just going to mention these and move on. Number 2 is the community partners like the Friends of Kananaskis Country and their volunteers of trail builders and trail repairers. And lastly, the 3rd big thing I want to tell you about today is From Coal to Community, the title of our new exhibit that we're thrilled to open in the museum this Friday at 6 p.m. It tells the story and the history of Canmore, and the board of directors, which includes Rob Seeley from Town Council. The board has been working tremendously hard on this project and fundraising for about 18 months. to create all the new exhibits in the museum, and you may have heard some of the construction going on the last couple of weeks. The mayor and town council are all invited, and if somehow you didn't receive your invite, I have a few in my jacket pocket here. So just wanted to say thanks for your time, and we hope to see you on Friday, and I really appreciate all the support of the town of Canmore, past and present, and look forward to working with you in the coming years. Thanks.
Well, it's a pleasure to welcome you to the town of Canmore. It's always nice to see people moving down valley from our friends and neighbor up there in Banff. It's quite a trend, actually, we're getting.
Yeah.
Understandable, of course, because Canmore is such a, well, much nicer town than Banff. You listening, Mayor Sorensen? Anyways, it's great to have you join us. Thanks very much.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
We have a delegation, Quantum Place, speaking about the area structure plan amendment.
Hello, thank you for having me, for having us actually, to present on the Resort Center area structure plan. With your permission, I'd like to introduce Mitch Braun. I'm not sure Council has received a presentation from Mitch before. He is one of the planners that will be helping us on the Resort Center amendment. He'll be starting the presentation and I'll be concluding it.
Great, thank you very much.
Hello, Mayor Borrowman, members of council. I appreciate the opportunity to address you tonight. I'll be giving you an overview on the Resort Center area and the intent for proposing amendments to the Resort Center ASP. So a little bit of background. The Resort Center ASP was approved by Canmore Council in 2004. The intent for the ASP area then, as it is now, is to increase the commercial tax base of Canmore. Part of the ASP area included plans for a 18-hole golf course, which began construction in 2006. 15 holes were essentially completed on the golf course, and I'll be showing you some imagery of the level of development those got to, which was significant. These holes, however, have been left in a fallow state since 2009. Additionally, part of the approved plan was for 30 golf cabins to be interspersed on the golf course north of the cabin line, which is indicated by that dashed line you can see going through the green golf course area on the graphic there. So, important question to address is why amend the Resort Center ASP at this point in time. One of the primary reasons was during the collaborative Smith Creek ASP process that is undergoing presently. It was identified that Canmore residents were quite interested to know what was going to happen with the unfinished course, and expressed a desire to be involved with a solution for those lands. Some reasons why the proposed golf course wasn't necessarily viable in terms of what we can do with that land today. Golf is actually statistically shown to be declining in popularity in North America. As you may know, Quantum Place does have some experience with golf course development and the economics thereof, and how golf course playership is on the decline. Therefore, options for finishing, developing, or operating the course were not economically feasible. In addition, there's been updated wildlife science which indicates that the soft edge approach, which essentially was the golf course serving as sort of an extension to the width of the wildlife corridor. Updated science is actually showing that this sort of soft edge can compromise wildlife movement and can actually increase human-wildlife conflict, as a soft edge acts as a sort of porous border between wildlife and human and development. Similarly, updated data in terms of undermining has we've been able to determine the extent to which undermining has taken place on the golf course lands within the Resort Center ASP, and the technologies involved in mitigating those sorts of undermining issues in terms of development on top of undermined areas has significantly improved, and there are various technologies that show that this can be done in an appropriate method. And finally, the Smith Creek terms of reference, as you may recall, identified that an amendment to the Resort Center ASP may be pursued at some point in time. So those are sort of the reasons as to the why and how of the present decision to move forward with this. This graphic is, again, shows the amendment area in the lighter purple there. So essentially, and you may be able to see, not quite underneath the existing unfinished golf course holes there. So it in general encompasses just that area of the golf course lands. This is the concept for the course layout that was proposed back when it was going to be a golf course. Not all of the holes as pictured in the previous image are exactly as this was conceptualized, but it gives you a good idea of what was originally meant to go in there. And here, as I referenced previously, are some examples of the level of development these holes got to. So, I mean, this was approximately 10 years ago, and you can see that the level of, essentially these were playable holes. There is existing land use within the Resort Center ASP area. Specifically, if you look at sort of those areas above the golf course lands indicated in purple, there's the Resort Center core in the middle. To the east was the resort accommodation land, and to the west is the area that's designated for potential resort expansion areas. And again, the lighter purple is the unfinished golf course lands. So with that, I'll turn the conversation over to Jessica, who will speak to the process involved in having these amendments put forward.
Sorry, I'm just going to go back. There's just one more thing that I wanted to point out on the Resort Center here, if I had the opportunity to do so. You could see that we split the area into two separate pieces, one being west of Three Sisters Creek and the other being east of Three Sisters Creek. The area that we want to focus on for development is actually west of Three Sisters Creek. We'd like to maintain a private recreation focus on the area east of Three Sisters Creek. So the area, if I can just point that out, just to be clear, this area here. You know, we're not sure what that private recreation focus will be, but we'd like to try to find an opportunity for that. So the process, as you know, that there's a collaborative Smith Creek process underway as we speak. There has been some good success with the community advisory group, representing a number of different perspectives from the community. We have formed a subgroup from that advisory group to help us with the developing a solution on the Resort Center amendment area. We're hoping to have this subgroup, and we are going to have this subgroup, report back to the community advisory group to keep them informed of the progress. And in that way, we can also keep the town informed of what's happening and also bring any concerns that the subgroup is having with regards to the proposal or, you know, what is being brought forward. It can be brought to light and to the administration's attention through the Smith Creek collaborative process. The intent is to submit the Resort Center amendment in alignment with the Smith Creek amendment so they can be considered at the same time. And we're hoping also to submit that in June 2016. We're also hoping to have, share the public engagement opportunities between Smith Creek and Resort Center so that the public isn't being overly, so you can only talk about Smith Creek at Smith Creek open houses versus not get some of their questions on Resort Center addressed at these opportunities and at these events. And I think also from a resource issue, it would make sense that, there's one place where all of their Three Sisters questions can get answered. So this is just an image of how we see the subgroup reporting up to the community advisory group. And still maintaining those elements of collaboration and learnings that we've had through the Smith Creek process, and the learnings that we've developed with administration as to the policy and as to the approach to wildlife, recreation, and other items that have been identified through Smith Creek that we can transport to Resort Center. And so we think that structure of the subgroups reporting up to Community Advisory Group will ensure that we can keep that element of collaboration without having a resource-intensive process for the amendment, the ASP amendment. So, Mitch mentioned that there's two key concerns and two things that have changed with regards to the golf course lands. One of them is undermining. What has changed? So we have an undermining map shown from 2005, circa 2005, and what's changed is the amount of boreholes that has been drilled on that golf course since 2005. You can see that the extent of the areas, some of these areas here, the hatched peach, the extent of the vertical workings, which is the hatched red, these have all been, geographically they're lessened. The peach areas have actually been downgraded to either a solid peach or a yellow in here. So this is what our undermining map looks today. And this is based on very, the most up-to-date engineering and geotechnical information. And we're also continuously improving that data through the drilling of boreholes and getting more modeling and engineering work done. And so the data that we had in 2005 was based on less boreholes and less information. So in 2003, one of the things that we found back in our old data was RMO, I guess, a cartoon that basically made fun of the fact that Three Sisters was going to build a school and a park and a soccer field on undermined land. But today, that is a really cherished school. It's part of the community. It is actually, it's very safe. And one of the technologies that was used on this undermined land in order to make it safe was pasting. And the technology used with pasting right now has been improved, and it's actually more economically available to use as a mitigation measure on Three Sisters lands. And so as the technology improves, as the information with regards to undermining improves, development has become more available or more feasible, I would say, on the golf course lands. So what has changed with regards to wildlife? And Mitch already talked about that there's a different perspective on a soft versus a hard edge being used, being either accomplished through a building or accomplished through something like a fence. Golder is out there openly saying that they don't agree with the previous study that they did in 2002. This is no longer what they think is the best available science. And this is a joint, Golder was selected jointly by the town and QPD in order to pursue the work on Smith Creek. And so we see wildlife science no longer considering these soft edges, and they're pointing to wildlife mortality and the human use of the wildlife corridor being a strong factor for actually going to a hard edge consideration, not a soft edge consideration. And so, and those we can get into the factors of that. I'm not a biologist, and so when there's a biologist in the room, we can get into those matters much more in depth. But the more recent data indicates that bears and cougars are adaptable, and they don't avoid these areas where there's this soft edge. They're coming in, they're interacting with the humans, and it's not a good thing for animals. So the opportunity is to base mitigations on the most recent science. And to be able to do that by implementing the strategy that was acceptable or good for Smith Creek, and applying it also to Resort Center. And so using that collaborative learning that we gained on Smith Creek and apply it to Resort Center. So wildlife corridors, they've changed before based on most recent science, and they can change again if we can, create the, the basis of understanding and buy-in with regards to those wildlife corridors. Their old wildlife corridor that was in 1998, went right through the Resort Center area and went up and in. And there was a wildlife corridor in 1998 that went where I believe Hubman is currently, right behind Hubman. And so it actually changed to where Tipple Valley is right now and to the corridor that we see today. There's the registered conservation easement, just by the way. It's registered. So that gets into the point of, there's an opportunity. We're already working jointly on an environmental study for Smith Creek, and we propose that that study can be joint for Smith Creek and Resort Center for a number of reasons. And one of them is that we've been continually discussing the approach to wildlife in Smith Creek as part of the collaborative ASP process. The consultant was already jointly selected, and that consultant was Golder. We believe that the approach to mitigation and wildlife should be consistent between the two areas. If the approach in Smith Creek is to have a fence with, or a fence or a hard edge with buildings, or if we're going to have an approach to recreation that ensures that the use of the corridor is lessened because we have dog parks and other things that encourage people to not use the corridor the way they have been in the past. Those are the same things that should be done for the Resort Center and Smith Creek. And there's also a lot of similarities between the two, areas. The same literature review would apply. The wildlife data, is looked at as a whole for the region, so it makes sense to do a joint environmental study for both Smith Creek and Resort Center. And where there are differences, where there are items or opportunities that we need to expressly go into, we can go into in a specific section in the EIS with regards to a difference or an item that needs to be looked at in more detail. So again, the advantage is that the town would also have access to the consultants, ask questions, and have opportunity to discuss their concerns prior to the EIS being completed and submitted. We could have a dialogue about what is going on, how is the EIS being formulated, and it also avoids the duplication and confusion that we see happens with the third-party review process. And our perspective is that third-party review process has been problematic, and that the collaborative process is a process that we feel, especially with the EIS portion of this, has been really beneficial to hear the town's views on certain aspects of the EIS upfront so we can get them addressed. So we can understand the perspective of the town, hear the concerns, and try to work through them collaboratively. It also avoids the unnecessary duplication of the research, the rationale, and the data presentation, and it allows for kind of a consistent line of thinking that resulted in the line of study. So if there was a decision made earlier on with regards to a mitigation, the town is aware that there was, the town or even the community advisory group is aware that there was an original decision-making process that led to a hard edge of a building being applied over a fence, or say a simple mitigation of being applied to the area because, you know, everybody can, you know, use a dog park within the area rather than within the corridor. Don't walk your dog in the corridor. So they understand the clear line of thinking of what resulted and what happened, you know, the decision-making process that resulted in the end EIS. I'm not sure I'm making myself clear, but if you have any questions, I hope you'll ask. So we see that there'll be a number of reports required for the amendment to the area structure plan. One of them being the environmental study or the EIS, a transportation study, or an update to the existing transportation study that's already been completed for the resort center, stormwater management plan update, all of the normal reports that you would see as a part of an ASP would also need to be updated as part of these amendments, depending on what we're proposing. And the thing that I want to make clear is that right now, we don't have a solid idea of exactly what we're going to be proposing. What we'd like to do is work with the subgroup and develop some ideas and hear their concerns and try to come up with a solution, just like we're doing in the Smith Creek process. So with that, I'll leave it to any questions that you may have.
Yeah, thanks very much. This is primarily just informational presentation. And of course, there'll be a lot of opportunity for council to ask detailed questions when the application comes in through that process. But clearly you're prepared to answer some questions this evening. Just one question around the existing area structure plan, the resort center area structure plan. The cabin line, can you speak to how that cabin line was initially defined? Why was the line where it is?
You know, I don't have all the history, so I want to kind of start off with that. I think it's a long, complex history, and there are people that have more experience and lived it that could probably answer the question better than I could. I understand that there was the Golder 2002 study, and there was quite a bit of negotiation that resulted between the community and Three Sisters of the Day, which is the current owners in a different iteration. So that's about, as much as I know at this time, or like I feel that other people could answer in better detail than that, but.
So I wasn't on council when this ASP was approved, but my recollection or understanding was particularly, more so on the west end of the wildlife corridor, the cabin line created that extra buffer for what was considered at the time by some to be a narrow corridor. So I don't know if Mr. Fish wants to speak to some of these questions. If there's anybody in administration, in current administration.
See, I knew there was somebody in the audience that would probably have lived it,
Yeah.
but I mean, really, I'm sure we'll be able to answer that question in more detail.
Well, it's certainly a question that I'll have and the community is likely to have is, while I would personally really like to see all Three Sisters lands development approvals in place now, I mean, sooner the better. Going back and changing an ASP when it really hasn't even started to be developed, it'd be nice to understand the discussion, the science, the information that created that approval in the first place. And I appreciate what you're saying about science changing and technology for dealing with undermine. I think that's all not surprising. One question I have is around the impact of the Smith Creek area structure plan and the approval. So you suggested that both the resort center and the Smith Creek area structure plan would come forward essentially as a package. Is that what you're intending?
I think the details need to be worked out with administration, but we were hoping, well, they would be two separate applications, but because of their interrelationship, we were hoping for a joint public hearing, because I think as a whole, people will have, or the public will have comments on them as a whole, rather than as two separate entities, and much of the comments will be, I think, related or they will have similar comments for both items. And so I think in order to understand the public's views on the application, it would be wise to hold them like one public hearing for both. That's our perspective.
Yeah. Well, I see, frankly, I see benefit from either approach. It would be good to understanding what may happen with the Resort Center ASP should help inform decisions on the Smith Creek ASP and vice versa, I suppose. But it's your process, and if you're comfortable that tying those two together in that sort of loose way won't dramatically impede the forward movement of the Smith Creek ASP, then that's great. You suggested they'd both be coming forward in June, and of course, then we'll need to follow the normal process with public hearings and all of that.
Well, they wouldn't be coming forward to council in June. They'd be coming forward
just
for
submit it
administrative review.
Right. So then I guess the question maybe to Mr. Fish is, when might it be coming, these things, when might both of those bits of business come to council? If they are submitted in June?
Late June? No. We'll have to see what state they're in and when and what the council schedule is. 2004, both area structure plans were approved, as I recall, after public hearings in August, and I think there were some concerns around that. It's sort of a tough thing. A lot of people are away on vacation, but there are also people in the community who are more available in the summer. So it's a bit of a trade-off. I think there will be some public engagement over the summer, and we'd have to see how complete the application is, where we're at with the community advisory group, and of course council's schedule, bearing in mind the summer break that council has.
Okay, great.
We hope fall 2016. It's our
Okay.
hope.
Just get a ballpark idea. Councillor Russell?
Thank you. I have an easy question, I hope. You referred to pasting for undermining it. What is pasting?
Pasting is where you take the earth, you take soil, and you generally mix it with kind of it looks like a concrete mixture, but it's not. It's kind of like it's a form of concrete mixture, and you take the soil and you mix it all together in a mixing truck, and you actually inject it into the mine, and there's cameras set up where you can actually...
The deep slurry fill. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I just never heard the term pasting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's almost like squeezing toothpaste into a mine shaft to fill it up to make sure that it doesn't move ever.
Sounds like a very technical explanation. Councillor Sanford?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Ms. Carpat, for your presentation. In terms of what you're going towards, is there still a hotel to be proposed in the resort center, or are you just talking about this one piece of land for redevelopment?
So the vision for, thank you for that question, the vision for the resort center is still for a health and wellness resort that includes hotels and amenities and retail services. So the vision the vision has not changed. The only thing that has changed in our minds is the viability of the golf course, so we'd like to find a solution for that land.
So the rest of the ASP, you're leaving as
Yes.
it was
Yeah,
before?
we're very happy with the rest of the ASP. We think it's still valid today. There might be some minor things that we, in the language that we might need to update, but we don't see anything at this point in time.
And the other question I had was, when you're talking about going to hard edge, does that mean you're moving away from the rail permeable fencing that's currently there? There's currently some fencing along the corridor?
So we haven't come to any conclusion yet within the Smith Creek process. It's just some ideas that we're talking about. And so I just wanted to use some examples as to if there's an approach in Smith Creek that we use, that we should probably transport it or port it to Resort Center to make sure that methodology is similar. But yeah, there is some thought about of having a hard edge and fence, but no conclusion on where we are with that discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Doesn't look like there's a lot of other questions, and I think some of the questions I have in my mind are better brought forward when there's something to actually talk about.
Absolutely. I know it's hard with the...
I think afterwards it'll be good at some point in the near future to be able to have a better understanding from administration as to how this fits with our current improved processes. And so anyways, for tonight, thanks for the presentation.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you for the opportunity.
Then we will move on to item C1. Looking to the minutes of the February 2nd regular meeting of council, are there errors or omissions? See none, I'll move the minutes be adopted as presented. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. And looking then to the minutes of the February 9th special meeting of council, errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll move the minutes be adopted as presented. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Moving on then to item E1. Mr. Fish.
Good evening, Your Worship, and members of council. I'm sorry to say we have a great party planned. Unfortunately, we have another party planned. So the two parties were planning to happen at the same time, and they're sort of different parts. One is the MDP public hearing that had been scheduled by council on next Tuesday, March 8th. We hadn't realized there was also an event planned for the outside of the Civic Center that would involve hopefully fairly robust civic celebration, and I think that the compatibility of those two events is not great, so the decision has been made reluctantly to reschedule the public hearing. So that is the issue that is before you tonight, seen as rescheduling the World Cup and Winter Carnival is likely more difficult. So instead, administration is proposing to move back the public hearing for the MDP 2 weeks to March 22nd. And I believe Ms. Cardinal has a proposed motion for council to consider.
Thank you, Mr. Fish. Are there any questions for Mr. Fish? Pretty self-explanatory. With that, then I will move the council cancel the public hearing on the municipal development plan for 6 p.m. on March the 8th, 2016, due to an unforeseen scheduling conflict. Is there discussion on that motion? Councillor Krausert?
Your Worship. Now, I thought that there was going to be a rescheduled council meeting on that night due to the April 5th meeting not proceeding.
Ms. DeSoto?
Yes, Councillor Krausert is correct. Currently, we only have one item scheduled for that meeting, and given that it's very important to have all of council present at the public hearing, we are proposing to utilize that time slot for the public hearing, and if need be, move that special council meeting to the Thursday, which was the alternate date for this public hearing.
Thank you.
Any other questions to the motion? See none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. I'll then move the council reschedule the public hearing on the MDP for 6 p.m. on March the 22nd, 2016. Discussion on that motion? Seeing none, call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Moving on then to item F1, Bylaw 2015-12, Subdivision Authority Bylaw. Mr. Sorfleet.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. I'm here to present the Subdivision Authority Bylaw 2015-12, pardon me. The purpose of this bylaw is to update our current Subdivision Authority Bylaw. In accordance with the MGA, the town of Canmore is required to have a subdivision authority. And so when we adopt a new bylaw, we rescind the old one. The point of this update is to update both the language and the practicality of the Subdivision Authority Bylaw. There's some challenges we've come up against, and I'm going to go through some of the differences. It's probably best if you have questions to ask them as they arise. The proposed changes in the Subdivision Authority, there's two authorities. Currently that is the case. So there's presently two authorities. One's a board comprised of councillors and the other is a CAO. The proposed change is to alter when different authorities would consider a subdivision. So the proposal is for the primary authority being that board made up of councillors, would consider subdivisions that involve the creation of municipal reserve, municipal and school reserve, or new public roads. So effectively when the municipality is taking on an asset. And then for the secondary authority, which is the CAO or their delegate, would be everything else. Presently, the Subdivision Authority Bylaw requires that the primary authority looks at any subdivision of more than 3 lots, in addition to municipal reserve, municipal school reserve, and whatnot. So anything with more than 3 lots or anything with ER. Environmental reserve and the creation of environmental reserve is unlike MR in that there are specific provisions for what environmental reserve can be taken for. It's a much more administrative function than municipal reserve and school reserve. Equally, the delineation of 3 lots or more was a bit of an arbitrary test. In some cases, a 3-lot subdivision is small or irrelevant in a sense. A 3-lot subdivision could be 3 massive blocks and 3 sisters that aren't being subdivided for development yet. Equally, a 3-lot subdivision could be a 3-unit townhouse. So the proposal is again to remove the number of lots and effectively provide that additional community transparency that the primary authority has when we're taking on municipal assets in the form of MR or new roads. It's important to note that a subdivision authority is not required to hold a hearing. Our practice is to hold a hearing when it's the primary authority and not when it's the secondary authority. Other changes that are proposed, simple changes. One would be changing quorum of the subdivision authority from 4 to 3. Specific provisions are 4 to 3, which would be a simple majority of the members of the subdivision authority. Specific provisions for meeting records to be taken, what's included, what's not, and clarification of SDAB membership and conflict with membership on the subdivision authority. So effectively, it's a tidy up of the existing subdivision authority bylaw. One piece I'd like to highlight is that one of the points of altering when the primary authority and when the secondary authority consider subdivisions is it is actually quite difficult to meet, it can be quite difficult to meet the 60-day required time frame for a decision when decisions go to the primary authority. Those do tend to be larger subdivisions, but from the date of an application being received, we have 60 days to render a decision. And so minimizing the number of times that needs to happen is ideal, and focusing on when when it's really truly important for the primary authority to have jurisdiction. Some alternatives could be considered by council. There are alternatives that we've looked at. You could have a different primary authority. At present, it's a board made up of councillors. Many jurisdictions delegate that to their planning commission. Ours is currently not set up for that. At this time, we're not recommending a change to the primary authority or who that is. The primary authority has appeared to work well for the past, at least, I think, 15 years that we've been doing it. We could also have different criteria for what goes to the primary authority. So you could re-include environmental reserve or a number of lots or whatnot. That's not recommended. Again, the intent is to both streamline process and ensure that there's that additional transparency of decision-making for more substantive subdivisions. And the other one that could be considered is a different quorum. Quorum is an arbitrary number. Council could select a quorum of 1 for the primary authority if they so chose. We have selected 3 just based on a simple majority, but another number is entirely appropriate at council's discretion. And with that, administration's recommendation is that council provide first, second, and third reading to bylaw 2015-2012. Happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you very much. Just briefly, if you could speak to the appeal process for decisions from either the primary or secondary authority?
Mm-hmm. To what effect?
Just
What went where?
what's the appeal process currently and what would it be in the future?
Oh, the appeal process.
Yeah.
Correct. So the appeal process, subdivision appeals, this bylaw doesn't affect subdivision appeals whatsoever. Any decision of the primary or secondary subdivision authority is appealable to the SDAB. The MGA sets out the specifics for who can appeal a subdivision. I'm going to paraphrase a little bit from the MGA, but effectively, unlike development, neighbors have no right of appeal. The applicant has a right of appeal, the municipality has a right of appeal, and any of the required government referral bodies have a right of appeal to the subdivision and development appeal board. I can look up the specific section, but that's effectively, yeah, that's effectively it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from members of council at this time? Councillor Krausert?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Sorfleet, for your presentation. Based on your presentation and previous communication we've had, I understand that the practices that different municipalities take are all over the map as far as how they approach who handles what decisions. So is my understanding then that there's really no best practice or norm?
No, do you want me to repeat some of the examples?
Well, you had mentioned that in for example, some go to planning commission, but in others, especially if they're high volume areas, a lot are dealt with by administrative body because of the 60 days.
So an example, Cochrane recently changed their subdivision authority bylaw to make all subdivisions go to administration for decision. And much like our proposed bylaw, there's a provision that administration can kick it to planning commission anytime they choose. That's particularly done on what they believe to be politically sensitive subdivisions. They'll send that to planning commission at their discretion. Other jurisdictions, like Chestermere, does administrative decisions effectively on subdivisions in new areas, and planning commission on existing areas. Airdrie has administrative decisions on up to 10 lots or anything with an ASP, and the rest goes to planning commission. It is all over the board. Yeah. It appears to me to be that, as you mentioned, that where there's either a high volume of subdivisions or a planning commission that either meets infrequently or has specific meeting dates, they've tried to defer more decisions to administration. So if your planning commission meets once a month and you miss that date, it's hard to hit the 60-day time frame. And then in other jurisdictions where less subdivisions are received, say, for example, the MD of Bighorn, all decisions go through their planning commission. Right. So there is no administrative.
Great, thanks. And appreciate that, thank you. Now obviously, environmental matters are very sensitive in our town. But just to be clear, the actual zoning of, wildland conservation, that's done at a different process, right? We're not talking about that. We're just talking about the delineation of parcels based on, particular uses with specific definitions. Right?
Yes, the subdivision authority is an administrative body. Land use is created by council.
Right.
Different rules pertain to the subdivision authority, like you can go in camera to discuss the issue, whereas council can't.
Right.
More specifically, the subdivision authority has very clear rules in the MGA under what they must approve and what they may approve, whereas council has much more discretion in that respect.
Great.
It's also important to note that the subdivision authority is appealable to the SDAB.
Great. Thank you.
Councillor Stanford.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Sorfi, for your presentation. I just had a question for you on page 2 of your report, where it says that notification for adjacent property owners and the appeal process are function of the legislative process and so remain unchanged. So whether it's the primary or secondary authority that takes the development process, people can still contribute their concerns if that's the case, because they're all going to be notified, just as we do now, right?
Correct. The subdivision, the requirements for notification for subdivisions are set out in the MGA, irrespective of who's considering the decision.
And so when people contribute their thoughts or concerns or support, or sometimes it's a neutral, right? I mean, people contribute all three. How will, if it's a secondary authority approving it, how do you retain the transparency of that process? Just do those letters or contributed from the adjacent property owners, do those become part of the package?
Yes and no. What's important to note is that the subdivision authority must consider submissions, isn't bound by them whatsoever, and doesn't have to do anything with them.
Right, and that's the way it is with the primary or secondary.
Correct.
But in the primary, because it's a public hearing, you do get the public's perspective on that particular development. If you're the
So the public doesn't stand up to speak.
no, but
They've
they
just
do
submitted.
contribute. Yeah,
Correct. Yeah.
because they're adjacent property owners. So
Correct.
in the secondary process, it is being considered, but it's not going to be in a public forum. So how would we know who has contributed what?
So in a typical subdivision that, say, goes to the CAO, we summarize the comments that have been received. On many subdivisions that are handled administratively, the only comments we receive are from utility companies. But that's something when we present a subdivision for decision by the CAO, we sit down with the CAO and say, here's what we've heard. So that's handled internally. Again, with the primary subdivision authority, no hearing is required for even the primary subdivision authority under the Municipal Government Act. So there isn't a requirement for public transparency of
But we
decision
do it.
making, but
We do it, yeah.
We do, yeah.
And so if, for instance, that appeal came to SDAB for appeal, would those comments from the adjacent property owners be included in that? Because SDAB would be public, wouldn't it? That would be a public process.
So for the SDAB would be considering the appeal, and the appeal can only be made from a valid appellant, which isn't a neighboring property owner.
But would their contributions to the development be included in that SDAB process?
They could be. I don't know if they typically are. It's rare for a subdivision to be appealed, so they could be, particularly at the discretion of the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board. They could say, we would like this information.
Okay, so it would become public if it went to appeal.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's all of the questions on your report. I just have a question of process, I guess. So this is bylaw 2015-12, and we're in 2016. Is there a reason why it's not 2016 something?
because we started it in 2015. It was originally scheduled to go to council in November of last year, and we postponed it. This isn't a pressing bylaw, it's a nice tidy up, but other items of business took precedence.
I suppose it doesn't really much matter one way or t'other.
Our land use bylaw is 22-2010 and was adopted in 2012.
Okay. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
With that, then I will move the council provide first reading to bylaw 2015-12. The discussion on the motion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. I'll move the council give second reading to bylaw 2015-12. Discussion on that motion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. I'll seek leave to go to third reading to bylaw 2015-12. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. And I'll then move the council give third reading to bylaw 2015-12. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. We'll move on then to item G1, the Southern Alberta Energy from Waste Association Memorandum of Understanding. Mr. Cole.
Good evening, Mayor Borman and members of council. And so we don't have to say that lengthy title. We'll just call it SEWA for the balance of this presentation, if everyone's agreeable to that. So yes, we're here to talk about a memorandum of understanding and also a representation of the town of Canmore within SEWA as well. So the motion in front of council, the two recommendations are the council approve the signing of the SEWA MOU and that council approve a delegate from administration to represent the town of Canmore on the Southern Energy from Waste Association. SEWA. So I thought before we get into what SEWA is, just for the benefit of perhaps some members of council as well as the gallery, I thought we would just talk very briefly about the town of Canmore and regarding its commitment to waste as well, because there is some connection there. So prior to the in the 1990s, we had a mix of recycling programs largely brought on by the community, which we had. In 1999, we brought on an animal-proof waste handling system, and then we had, through the course of that decade, we had a number of enhancements. So we expanded our recycling program, we added, household hazardous waste, we added bicycle tires, and so on and so forth. But what the reason why I wanted to highlight is 2009, we had taken a venture of studying the opportunity for energy from waste for the town of Canmore. And it was completed and approved and adopted by council in 2009. And the study at that time said that the waste stream within the town of Canmore was much too small, and to reconsider that at a later date, perhaps when the technology would catch up to the volumes that we were generating at the time. So it is something that we had looked at before, and I thought that would be prudent to remind council and the public about that.
Do you mind if we ask questions during your presentation?
Oh, yes, for sure.
Just on that study, my recollection was it showed that the technology would make it feasible for an energy from waste in the Bow Valley if all of the feedstock from Lake Louise through to the MD was available.
It did, however, say that even then there was a number of other challenges, including siting as well, which was a fairly critical one.
Yeah. And also remind me, there was a presentation with somebody from Innovate Alberta that suggested technology had changed at that time, and they had a technology that they thought would work for a town like Canmore. Does that ring any bells? Doctor something or other?
Yeah, the only comment I would say is that there are a lot of companies out there that profess to have a technology
But this
that
wasn't a company, this was Innovate Alberta.
Alberta Innovates,
Alberta
which
Innovates.
Alberta Innovates is a subcommittee of the province, funded by the province to provide technical support as well as funding to municipalities and commercial enterprises to support alternative energy, including energy from waste. And at that time, and Chow Mie was her was her name, and there are, she's in the industry. She's suggesting that there were some technologies. We looked at, there was a number of technologies. We get from time to time manufacturers or suppliers of the technologies suggesting that there is the opportunity for that. They likely go knocking on many municipalities' doors, and I think part of the issue is the technology, part of it is the funding, the acceptance of energy from waste, as well as the key one, and that's location.
Okay, thanks.
So then in 2012, there was, council had adopted a waste management strategy. One of them was to continue on and investigate energy from waste options, as well as a number of other initiatives. And then finally in 2014, we installed a Beyond Curbside program and completed the construction of a waste management center. And right now we're underway with a waste characterization study, which will hopefully feed both a source separated organics program in the future, as well as an energy from waste system, if that comes to fruition. So SEWA itself, I'm not an expert on SEWA, so I will do the best I can to explain the company or the organization itself. From what I understand, it began in 2009, and it was led by the District of Vulcan Regional Waste Commission. And in 2010, it had become a status of nonprofit. Their mission is to establish an energy from waste facility within southern Alberta. And their funding to date has been a blend of grant dollars from regional collaboration money, as well as anyone who is a member to receive per capita cost. And right now that's at 40 cents per person. At this point, the town of Canmore is a member through the Regional Waste Commission, so our name is in there. We're identified in their documentation, and our membership is provided by the Regional Waste Commission. Structure, it represents currently 60 municipalities. I understand that can fluctuate. I've seen it up in the 70s, so municipalities do come and go. I talked about our participation in there. Structurally, how it's organized, there is a board of directors as well as an executive directors. There's 4 of those. And they have a board governance committee, 4 members of those. The board meetings, they meet the last Friday of every month, so there is 12 meetings annually. And then the executives, which is made up of the executive directors, they meet twice a month, or every second Friday monthly. And annually, they do have an annual general meeting, and that is scheduled for spring, and I think at this time, they're not sure if it's going to be May or April of 2016. The status, there's a number of projects that they're currently working on. Some are complete. So the first one, phase 1, was a feasibility study, just to understand in general terms, is this something that makes sense? Should we pursue this? So there was a fairly high-level study done, and it determined that it is, in their opinion, worth exploring, continuing to explore. So there was some development plans, some site development plans, a regulatory plan, and a communication plan. Phase 2, a governance model with, you can imagine, with representation of over 60 municipalities. How do you get anything moving? They all will have their own agendas. Some will want to have the location of a energy from waste, some will not, and the costing and all of those particular details can be quite complex. And to get a number of municipalities, especially in order of 60, to agree, they had to develop a governance model. And you can see that a lot of those decisions are going to be formalized and approved by the board of directors and the executives. And so I think it's prudent to be aware of that as well. So they have gone through that model. That's complete. And the phase they're working on right now is the business plan, the detailed business plan. And They are currently working on that, and they're hopeful that they will have that done sometime in 2016. So part of that includes completing a waste characterization study. From what I gathered so far to date, they've completed 3 of them within the last quarter. So those took place, I believe, in January, and those are some of examples of some of the memberships that are there. And that's the 3 that they've done so far. And the other part that'll come out of that, the business plan, detailed business plan, is to understand the different types of technology. What is the preferred technology? From what I understand, they have received submissions or letters of interest from at least 24 different technology providers. So there's a lot of interest. They've gained a lot of interest internationally, and because there appears to be quite a bit of momentum within this initiative. So they have received submissions from 24 different technology providers, as well as there has been 8 municipalities or regional districts who have proposed that they would like to be the location for one or multiple site facilities, depending on what is the best approach to take. Now with that, as the momentum continues on, we're right now, the municipalities haven't really given much formally. It's really taken place in the form of money at this point, and for us, as I mentioned, that's been through the Regional Waste Commission. So as they gain momentum, they wanted a higher level of comfort that municipalities are truly interested in this as it picks up, and so hence the reason or the request from them for the town of Canmore or any other member municipalities who are interested in continuing with this initiative is to sign a memorandum of understanding that we're formally interested in this. Within the memorandum, we had received the first request for this memorandum last year. At that point, administration didn't feel it was something we needed to move on very quickly. However, now we feel it's probably a good time to formally make a request of council to adopt and sign this memorandum of understanding. I tried to get a number of how many municipalities have formally adopted. That number seems to be unclear at this point, but what I can say is the town of Banff did this in the fall, and the MD of Bighorn likely did this right after the MOUs were originally sent to the municipalities. So we would be the last one within the regional district of the Bow Valley. So as I said, all it really does in signing the MOU is that it formally tells CEWA that we are interested in continuing with that initiative. At some point, we'll be getting a request for providing data, and obviously we'd be providing those data. And from what we can tell at this point, at least this memorandum that's in front of you, which is set to expire within the next 3 years, it does have a term date of 2018, December 31st, 2018. And it sounds like the MOU would be replaced with another one at that point. But I highlight that because it is a term and likely be replaced with another one. At this point, there is no call for any additional funds. The Commission, from what we understand, will continue to provide the membership fees, so there's no cost to us, and we continue along formally. And as per the agreement, at any time the town wishes to, they could withdraw themselves from CEWA. As I said, the reason we are bringing this forward is our membership wasn't a concern at that point, but the AGM is scheduled to come up in the next 4 months, and we felt it prudent that we have a signed MOU and that we formally have a motion of council for a representative to go there and vote and speak on behalf of the municipality. So alternatives to not sign it, as I mentioned, there's no issue with signing it. So one thing we do have to keep in mind, if we don't sign it, at some point we will be asked to sign it. So right now there isn't any pressure to do it, and so administration doesn't feel that there's any issue with doing it now. As I said, it's probably best so that we go into the next AGM with a formal acceptance of continuing on with CEWA. The other is to remove themselves, give formal notice to CEWA that we are no longer interested in participating. One caution there, if we do, and as the program continues to take on more momentum and has invested much more time and money in there, that if we do at some point in the future wish to go back and be part of the initiative, maybe at a higher cost. And so at this point there is none, so we would recommend not doing that. And then another one that's actually not in the staff report, which is a blend of the two, which is we sign, but we don't actually send a representative. And so we are formally recognizing we would like to be part of the initiative, but it would be beneficial to have someone there who can vote. I understand the SEWA would need a formal motion of council to recognize a vote on behalf of the town of Canmore. So if we're going to be members, we may, it would be appropriate to have a formal representation. And we have to do that through a formal notice of council. And with that, I'm finished. If there are any questions, and I have the motions back up on the screen for council's consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. I have some questions. Looking to your report, so this time we send our biosolid waste to Banff for the Enviro program or Enviro project for composting.
We're not doing that currently, not yet.
Well, we've agreed we will.
Our waste is going there, if that's what you were
Yeah, that's what I
thinking.
said.
Yes.
Sorry, biosolid waste.
Yep.
Right. And that program is successful, the Enviro?
BAM's Enviro program for biosolids? My understanding, it's successful, but like most processes, it can have some hiccups. But my understanding, it's working.
And then I think our expectation, our plan then is some point in the future, near future, hopefully begin a collection of organics, compostable materials.
Yes.
And wouldn't those be directed to the Banff Enviro facility as well?
It's quite possible. The discussions with BAMF on hauling our biosolids to them included adding source-separated organics as well, and how we would introduce that into the truck and what that would mean for their process. They do it currently right now with their own SSO.
So what I'm trying to understand is if we have a successful facility in the valley that deals with most of the waste or much of our waste, why would we then want to entertain trucking it somewhere out of the valley? What's the advantage, the benefit to the environment?
The benefit is we will, sadly, we will always generate waste that will not be recovered from a organic collection program, a recycling program, household hazardous waste program. We'll always have some type of residual to manage. Our goal is to reduce that significantly. So like you mentioned, our biosolids, we have a system for that right now, and it's currently going to Penhold, to a farm for composting. If we introduce source-separated organics in the future, I agree. It's, it either goes there or goes to BAM's facility. So we want to take those out of there right now. And the waste characterization study will allow us to understand how much that is and what the seasonal fluctuations are. Now, the challenge is there's a number of things that will still be there that is just people don't put things in the right containers, so they're not keen on recycling, so they don't do it. So we have that material in there. There are certain things that just you can't recycle, right? Like cellophane is a big one, right? So what do we do with that? And so it's what the SEWA initiative recognizes is that there will always be a waste stream. And we're a tourist town, so our waste is, we're a community. We have a little bit of industry, we have tourism, we have waste that's kind of unique to us, which is why we're doing our own study. They're representing a number of rural municipalities who have different waste streams that we just can't fathom, right? Which comes from the agricultural field. So when you're driving down the highway and you see those large marshmallows, they protect it from the elements. However, then they have this plastic they need to deal with. So what do they do with that? So they recognize that they're going to have a stream of waste down the road that they need to deal with, and it's likely never to go away. So then you start looking at the alternatives. Do you landfill it, which is what the town of Canmore and most municipalities are doing right now in Alberta. And so then you create this time capsule that sits and it decays over time, and if we're lucky, and generally it doesn't, And we're sending it right now to Canmore, which is about an 800-kilometer round trip. Now, or we could take it to a facility that could turn that material into a type of gas that we could use for combustion, or we could use it to generate electricity. And that's the fourth R, recovery, getting some type of energy out of it. So that's the reason. I don't know if that helps, but.
Yep. And Councillor Crowsford has a question as well, but just before, on that thought, so you mentioned that there's 8 regions or municipalities that have indicated their interest in hosting the facility. Do you know who those are or what municipalities those are?
I know one of them is it's either the region or the town of Vulcan. Yeah. And what SAWA has done is they have done some preliminary work on understanding where the volumes of waste are and trying to centralize where the facilities are. And ironically enough, Vulcan is really, really close to that. Yeah. Some of the municipalities are seen as an economic driver, right? When the construction of the facility, they anticipate having 500 people employed as trades to construct a facility, operating the facility, just the facility itself, as well as the conveyance of the material to the site will create employment, and they see that as an economic benefit to them. Also, right now, what we're understanding, especially with the last facility introduced in the province of Ontario, the regulatory requirements are very stringent, and each new facility has more constraints on it than the facility before. And so there's a high level of confidence that the technology works and that the air quality won't be compromised in around those communities.
Okay, just one last question on that thread, that line of thought. So you note that the initiative is intended to resemble a utility where all customers pay the same fee, hauling and disposal, regardless of the proximity to the facility. So we would pay the same amount to haul our waste to Vulcan as Vulcan would?
Yes, that's the last I heard, and I believe the number I heard too, which was quite astounding at the time, but I think inflation and other things need to be factored in, was $57 a ton, which included transportation and disposal, and that would apply to anybody regardless of proximity to the facility.
Is that in the business plan, you suppose, because of the money that's earned on the generation of the energy, the gas?
Yes, they would. Yeah, I mean, that would be a revenue source that would help offset the cost and the capital cost for operating the facility.
Councillor Crowsford.
Your Worship, thank you, Mr. Como, for your presentation. Different topic of question. I was just curious as to what were the thoughts with respect to the second motion being recommended? What was the thoughts with regards to the delegate coming from administration?
The rationale for that is continuity. So, as I said, this has been around since 2009, so we are now year 7. That's 2 or 3 council terms. And so really that would be one. I guess I've been here too long, if that happens to be me. The other is, I guess, expertise too, right? Yeah. So I'm, like through the original study, I had developed some knowledge around this, and so that was the other rationale for administration personnel.
Great, thank you.
Another question. It'll come to me in a second. The MOU, which was originally circulated a long time ago, was sent to 70 various municipalities and MDs and whatnot, and only 4 signed. Do you know why that is?
So I'm not sure where you read that only 4 have signed.
I think it was in the letter, from Brownlee, second page, 3rd line. Some but not all of the stakeholders of COR obtained a draft in the summer of 2014 from us. and we only received 4 copies of the MOU returned back to us.
Right.
Yeah, so that, my curiosity though is why only 4 of the municipalities at the time would have returned the MOU?
I'm not sure the reason they would have waited. I know which is likely because there was not much uptake in the MOU at that time, which is why they formalized it and sent it out in mid-2015.
So then this is the MOU that we're looking at dated 2015, is that, do you know if that's the same as the one that went out in 2014? Pardon me?
The following paragraph says similar but not identical.
Right,
I think there was some feedback and they made some changes.
okay, so do you know how many municipalities have signed this MOU?
No, I tried to find out how many. It sounds like I contacted SEWA to understand, and they were unsure simply because some of the municipalities have sent the MOU back to SEWA, some have sent it back to Brownleaf Riot, and they don't have a combined number.
Councillor Russell?
Thank you, Your Worship. On your question that just jumped up immediately there, I believe it to be over 60, but I can't give you an accurate, I can't place a body part on that. The uptake when they changed the second MOU and brought it up, the uptake, it was basically putting them in the spot of saying, do you want to be a part of the program or not? And the uptake has been substantial.
Okay.
But I will verify, I'll try to verify that. And just was an update on a couple of your questions that you had asked Mr. Como to help him out with this. The tonnage cost is, one of the benefits on that reduced tonnage cost is the proposed plan is to bring back a whole bunch of pre-existing railway spur lines that service most of these communities, which will result in people, 20, 30, 50 kilometer hauls to the rail line, and the plan is to train it in. Boxcars do train hauls, which will just cut down a whole lot of traffic congestion, air quality. It's a pretty good spot, and ironically, the center of mass for this whole haul of the membership is the county of Falcon area, which is where all these little municipalities are all saying, pick me, pick me. They want, there's the active, that it's, instead of the usual, you're not siting a dump within 500 miles of my place, this place is just being embraced.
So if that were to move forward, then the waste from Canmore would be sent by train from here?
Potentially, there's some logistics to work, but potentially we could be accessing the railway siding at Exshaw, so we'd be trucking very little, and it would be trained. There's some containerization issues to come up to deal with, but potentially with all those obstacles technically solved, we'd be loading our stuff up at Exshaw.
Interesting, thanks. So one question around the MOU itself. Just want to make sure I understand the commitment. So again, on the second page of the MOU, the 4th paragraph down says, this MOU requires a commitment from the signatories to participate in the implementation of the project. So in that context, what does implementation mean?
I would read that as the initiative itself. So it's to just continue on as they've been doing to date. It's not, the implementation is the initiative versus the construction of a facility.
Okay, so implementation then is meant to suggest these initial studies, phase 1, 2, 3?
Yeah, which completes with the detailed business plan.
And both of those, phase 1 is completed, phase 2 and 3 would be completed this year. Is our expectation?
1 and 2 are complete. 3 will be completed this year, is what I've been told.
Okay, so we would just then wait for the business plan to be completed, and that would and the implementation part of the project?
My understanding, the detailed business plan would have a number of next steps and recommendations, and so then they would just continue on. And so we would be advised of what's going on with that, with our, we get monthly updates at the Regional Waste Commission on what's happening in Sewa. If we're not in attendance, as well as through our representation, we would understand what's going on, what would be the next steps. And so the process would just continue on. There wouldn't be, we're not going to sign on an MOU for each phase. And so we would be aware, they're continuing to move forward with the initiative. Maybe that would have been a better word. But at this point, they're not implementing anything other than completing a number of plans and studies to understand what the next phases are going to look like. So there are some unknowns at this point. You know, ultimately, what type of technology, where it's going to be, those will be big answers that they will then help formulate what the next steps will be.
Okay, so
And sorry, one other thing, Mayor Borman, is the other big step for this is the regulatory approval, which will not be 6 months. And so that, you know, the implementation of moving forward with an energy from waste, that process will likely take a year and a half.
I guess it's just the commitment to participate in the implementation that I'm struggling with. That sounds to me like it's a commitment to not just to see what the information is at business plan stage. That would be different.
Yeah. At this point, there's really nothing to implement. So it's really just an overall initiative. These are the
So
steps.
if there's nothing to implement, why would they require a commitment from us to participate in implementation?
I think perhaps it's semantics. It's just the word that they chose.
Ms. DeSoto?
Section 2.04, so page 5 of the agreement, page 30 of your agenda package, outlines the project obligations quite clearly. And it clearly states that, subject to further agreement of the parties to proceed, the project activity shall not include any physical work, construction, or provisions of services themselves. The purpose of the project shall be to investigate and review the options and alternatives presented to the party.
Right, so that clause would suggest that perhaps in the Brownlee letter, the implementation is a badly chosen word.
Yes, so the MOU is, the wording of the MOU is what's important.
Thanks. Councillor Sanford? You were on a second ago.
I believe Ms. DeSoto answered the question that I was going to discuss with you.
Great. There any other questions at this time then? Councillor Comfort?
So this is just in regards to the technology and where that is at the moment in terms of generating waste, or sorry, generating energy from the waste. So my understanding is that there are many different kinds of waste in the stream, and that's why you need the waste characterization study. And when is that anticipated to be completed?
I believe that the one led by Sewa will be completed this year as well.
Okay. And then further to that, and this is just a layman's understanding of what's been explained, it's going to be difficult to actually finally make it work because there are so many different types of waste coming from each of those 60 to 70 places. So you've got, some places are going to have more wet waste, and some people are going to have more dry waste or wood chips or like whatever, depending on what the local industry is as well. So that, it seems to me that's not going to happen in a big hurry, like picking the right technology and making sure it isn't something that, it's something that's going to be enduring or sustainable.
Yes, facilities who have successfully been not implemented have, it's been decades in the process to get to actually get a complete because of all of those hurdles, right, the regulatory, the siting, which, you know, is quite surprising in this case that that's not a hurdle. But it's also understanding the technology and being very comfortable because the capital outlay for these facilities is in, you know, could be in the $100 million range. And so they want to make sure that they are investing in the right technology.
Thank you.
Yeah. And in this case, it could be multiple technologies because of the different streams. So they do, I know that that's also at play as well in their discussions.
I just have one last question around your proposed alternative motion, which is to not sign the MOU. You say it's a reasonable option because it neither indicates formal interest nor disinterest. So can you just speak to that option?
So I'm just going to find it here. So that was under the alternative?
Yeah, in your report, page 20 of the agenda.
And sorry, it was number 1?
Yeah, first alternative analysis.
Yeah, I mean, it's what we've been doing to date since, you know, the first call in 2014 and then the more formal call in 2015. We haven't, and even now, you know, into the first quarter of 2016, we haven't signed anything. And yet we're still a member. It hasn't cost us anything. So we could continue its status quo. It's not something that we couldn't consider. But I think, you know, as this project gains momentum and then as they near some key phases of the project, in particular the detailed business plan, it would be prudent for us to now, you know, have this discussion and determine, are we wanting to continue with this initiative or not? Especially leading up to the AGM, which will likely be making some decisions on how this initiative proceeds.
Okay, thanks very much. Are there any other questions at this time? Members of council? Seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation. And with that, I will move that council approve the signing of the Southern Alberta Energy from Waste Association Memorandum of Understanding. And speaking to that motion, I'll support the motion. I'm with some hesitation. I'm afraid, or I'm worried that we're losing the initiative within the valley. I've always felt since this even started, SEWA first became part of our vocabulary here, that we were conveniently able to not worry about dealing with our own waste in this valley. And with the Enviro project in the town of Banff, it looked like a big chunk of our future waste needs or future waste generation would be dealt with in the valley. And now with this proposed SEWA project, which arguably could be 5 or 10 years before there's anything concrete. So I will support the motion, but with some hesitation. Is there other discussion? Councillor Krausert?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I'll support this motion. I don't think that there's anything to lose by participating as a signatory to this Memorandum of Understanding. I don't think anybody knows what it will look like, but I think it's worthwhile to be at the table. Having read the entirety of the Memorandum of Understanding, I thought it was really well written, and I feel that there is a lot of protection, that we're not overextending or agreeing to anything that is obliged upon us or forced upon us by signing. I also don't see it as foregoing the possibility that there might be multiple paths that our waste goes, depending on the type of waste, whether it's recycle or to Banff, a portion of it, and then a portion of it through this. I mean, who knows what it will look like? So I think that I think that there's an excellent opportunity to continue to investigate better ways to deal with the waste that we produce.
Councillor Stanford?
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, I too will be supporting this motion. I think Mr. Como has done a very good job of analyzing what's on offer here. And as a member of the Bow Valley Waste Management Commission myself, I have been updated regularly on what SEWA has done. And essentially, we're going to be facing waste issues in the future where if landfills are closed and our options start to diminish, I think it's prudent of us to be in this way of thinking early so that we do have all the options in the future. We don't have the option of sending our household waste to the Enviros facility at this point. It's only biosolids that could potentially go to Enviros. So, I mean, there are a number of waste streams that we deal with. We've got recycling, we've got household waste, and we've got bio waste that all have to be dealt with. And as the valley grows, as the populations grow, as we have tourism in the valley, we are generating a lot of waste. So we better be on a future course to deal with that waste. And I think this is a good way to do that. So thank you very much, Mr. Como, for all your analysis and your input as well. Thanks.
Councillor Russell?
First off, I'd like to echo Councillor Sanford's well-stated points. This is a really forward-looking project. One of the most graphic examples of the value of it is what happened with Whistler. Whistler area lost their landfill closed because they ran out of space, and with no plan in the future, they're trucking their waste to Washington at $700 a ton. It's pretty drastic. We've still got life in our landfill here. We've still got, for now, places to truck our waste. This project, the alternative, it's a whole alternative energy program that's being embraced by the federal government. P3 Canada is all over this to give money to the project. It's just a win-win all the way along, and it's forward. We just came back from a conference in Lethbridge where we got to look at a very minor league scale of this. It's a Lethbridge biofuels plant where they process manure, capture the methane gas, use that to drive turbines and generate electricity. It's a small scale. Oh, and of course they reuse the manure after the fact, which is almost purified by removing the methane from it. It's not quite running to full speed, and it's very close to break even. You're driving past, it just looks like a bunch of grain bins until you get close to it. This is a real winning project that I'm pleased to support.
Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. I'll then move that council approve a delegate from administration to represent the town of Canmore on the Southern Alberta Energy from Waste Association. Councillor Sanford?
Thank you, Worship. I'd like to propose an amendment to this motion, if possible. I have sent it to Ms. Cardinal. I'd like to propose that the delegates that go and vote on behalf of council are appointed from council, who are also directors of the Bow Valley Waste Management Commission. Both Councillor Russell and I have attended SEWA AGMs in the past, and we have experienced the presentations. So I think that we have the continuity of the process. Because we are elected officials and we are representing our populations, these are political decisions, and they will be political decisions in the future. If we are to support the ongoing SEWA continuum, we will be having to make decisions of a political nature. And at this point in time, the verification that I've received from Paul Evans, he has suggested that all of the members who are voting members of SEWA at this point are elected officials, save one, who is the CAO of the Newell Regional Waste Division. So I think we need to be looking at this from that perspective, considering that, sorry, not Paul Evans, Paul Ryan. Forgive me, I've given you the wrong name. It's Paul Ryan, who is a director of the SEWA organization. And we are all elected officials that vote in this regard. So I would like to just make that amendment that it's the 2 members of the Bow Valley Waste Management Commission who are appointed from the town of Canmore and who would be appointed to the SEWA board.
So this is an amendment to the motion that's on the table?
Yes, the original
To change-
amendment,
Then the amending motion is to change delegate from administration
right,
to read Councillors Ed Russell and alternate by Sanford.
that's correct.
So that's a different motion, but
Well,
so your
it's,
intent is to amend the motion that's on the table?
right. And to add as signing authorities and voting members, because that's what we're actually doing by appointing those, we're appointing the opportunity to vote at the AGM. So if we appoint administration, we're appointing from an administrative direction, but if we appoint councillors, we are in line with what the rest of the municipalities are appointing to
So
the...
then I'm just a little confused at this point then. So my take on the motion was that administration would go to the regular monthly meetings to represent the town. And your amendment seems to be specific to the AGM when there's
Well, the
voting
only time that we would get to vote is at the AGM, because we are not on the board. We would be,
Right.
we would be
So
appointed.
how is this different then from administration representing the town? Maybe administration could speak. My understanding was that member of administration through this motion would attend the regular meetings, the monthly meetings that you spoke to in your report.
I think we're talking about the same thing. So how often we attend the meetings, I think it'd still be to determined. As far as the delegate piece, that would be the one that Councillor Sanford is referring to, is at a minimum attending the annual AGM, and whatever motions are being presented to the members, that they have a voting hand at that point. So it's I think the question then is that a member of council, or is that someone from Town of Canmore administration that's going to be doing that particular? That's the one that I think SEWA is most interested in understanding, who is going to be formally representing the Town of Canmore for these
For voting
decisions.
purposes.
Yes.
Okay. If this motion is successful, then would administration be able to maintain some involvement with SEWA project as we have for a number of years?
Well, for sure, yeah. We could, at a minimum, be there in a supportive role
Okay.
For the council delegate.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Russell?
I was going to say, that's been,
Okay. So then, the motion that's on the table is to approve a delegate from administration to represent the town of Canmore on the Southern Alberta Energy from Waste Association. If I could make a friendly amendment to your amendment, it would be to amend the motion that's on the table to read, council approve, or council appoint Councillor Ed Russell and alternative Vice Sanford to represent the town of Canmore on the southern, on SEWA. Pardon me?
Yes, but I think it's important to convey to SEWA that we are voting members, because we do have an opportunity to vote at the AGM. The other meetings that they have monthly are not meetings that we would necessarily attend, but we only get to vote at the AGM. So we
Right.
need by council motion to have voting members clarified.
Okay, if you guys are the official representatives of the town, that implies voting right. Does it have to be that specific?
I think if you expect us to vote on behalf of the town, it should be.
Okay. Councilor McCallum?
Thank you, Your Worship. So, so there are, in addition to the AGM, there are monthly meetings that need to be attended. So you're not expecting to attend those monthly meetings. You just want the ability to vote at the AGM. So my question is there going to be a working relationship between administration who is going to attend those monthly meetings? I'm guessing that's the intention. And the two delegates, so that you have a good understanding as to what has been digested by administration, so you know what you need to vote on. Does that make any sense?
No. Sort of. I guess you're asking if
It's like sending somebody else to the
would
forums.
administration attend the monthly,
Yeah, well, administration's going to be attending the monthly meetings, but with that knowledge is not going to be able to vote. So my understanding is then that that knowledge is going to be somehow transferred on to the voting members, because they're not going to be attending the monthly meetings, so that they can vote. It seems
put that
overly
back up?
complicated. And in the spirit of that, I just know that we went through a committee of committee reviews, not last year, and wanted to pare down our committee involvement from a political perspective. So that's
Yeah.
why I'm sort of, I've
So-
got a few conflicting things going on in my head.
Ms. DeSoto?
Yes, from administration's perspective, and sorry, Councillor Sanford, I know you had provided the red line version, so it might be easier for council to see the amending motion as the red line version. So the amending motion would actually read to strike the words approve and insert the words that are underlined there. Well, I guess we should underline, yeah. However, I would just like to reiterate the response that Mr. Como gave is that it is appropriate for an elected representative to attend the annual meeting. That is the only meeting currently that we've been required to attend. Any technical meetings that might come in the future, they may ask for administrative representatives to attend, and we can certainly do that without a council motion. So from this perspective, that motion works for administration.
So then what I'm hearing is we could defeat the motion that's on the table and put that motion up.
If that's easier, you could do that, yes.
I think that's
Okay.
simpler, cleaner than trying to amend the motion that's on the table now.
Okay.
And you're suggesting that regardless of what the motion is, administration would be able to attend the regular meetings. So just to be clear then, Councillor Sanford, this is specific to the AGM?
Voting. Okay.
Okay. I'm wondering if we need the reference to the Bow Valley Waste Management
I
Commission.
wondered the same.
I mean, arguably, that could change at the organizational meeting, and then we would have to bring a new motion forward for representation to SEWA. Again, it would be cleaner if it didn't reference your appointment to Waste Management Commission. Make that as a friendly amendment. Councillor Sanford?
Well, as I understand, most of the members who are on the SEWA as voting members are members of waste management commissions as well, because they are dealing with waste through a commission process. Now, we may have to do this appointment annually anyway, because the monthly meetings are not meetings that we can vote at. They're only board meetings. So we could attend them for information purposes, but the board does send out, I believe it's a quarterly update to all of its members. The town of Canmore gets an update from the Sewa board. The Bow Valley Waste Management Commission gets a monthly update from their meeting. So there's really no, it's not necessary for us to attend the monthly meeting, but if we want to have input into the process as it goes forward, we should be voting members at the AGM. And the meetings are all over the place, so I don't know that it's reasonable to expect administration to travel to Champion or Camrose or, you know, wherever the meeting happens to be. That might not be realistic for us to attend those meetings, but we should attend the AGM and we should be able to vote at the AGM.
So again, this is specific to the AGM. Right.
Because we can't vote at the other meetings. We could attend them, but we do get updates in other ways, so it's not really necessary for us to attend.
Councillor McCallum?
Okay, so all great answers. Thank you very much. My next question has to do with what the mayor was talking about, is about who are both directors of the Bow Valley Waste Management Commission. I too am wondering, understanding that traditionally members of the waste commissions attend these meetings, but if it would be better from a governance perspective to remove that from the motion so that it's clear that you're voting from a town of Canmore perspective when you go to these meetings versus a Bow Valley Waste Management Committee. That seems to cloud it a bit, and I'm just wondering if you two would consider a friendly amendment to remove that piece, understanding that, of course, it would make total sense for those that are repping on waste to have voting rights on this particular committee. Thank you very much.
Yes, I would accept that as a friendly amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Sanford.
Okay, so we'll strike the reference to the, but we still have the first motions on the table. Councillor Krausert?
So before I ask my question, just a clarification. Are we dealing with this as a separate motion and the first one's still on the table, or are we dealing with this as an amending motion?
I think it's cleaner just to deal with the motion that's on the table and either approve it or defeat it and then bring this motion forward.
Okay.
Ms.
Okay.
DeSoto?
Well, just, sorry, from a procedural perspective, Councillor Sanford wants to amend it so that it can't be approved, so the amendment is dealt with first. If you put it on the table and it gets approved, then
So so with that clarification, are we dealing with it as an amendment? We're dealing
It's
with
an
the
awkward
amendment?
amendment, but okay.
I think we can manage it. If
Yeah.
we go back to the other screen, working with the red line version, we will create the full amendment of striking certain words and inserting the
Okay,
others.
So then the red line is the amended motion,
Correct.
if the amendment's accepted. Council point, Councillor Zed Russell. From the town of Canmore to the southern one. Okay, then voting on that amendment,
Okay, well, not voting yet, I have a comment.
Councillor Krausert?
Yeah. So my concern is, and that perhaps then I'll ask a question of Councillor Sanford. If there's going to be voting at the AGM, what are the parameters upon which the voting members we choose, if we choose some, will be acting? How are you to know what are the wishes of this council?
Councillor Sanford?
Well, the types of requests we've had in the past for voting are mainly dealing with governance. So what we would be voting, what I believe maybe Councillor Russell was at the most recent AGM, so maybe he can answer that question.
Councillor Russell?
Basically, they circulate a pre-agenda for it. There'd be a set of issues identified. Procedurally, we've never voted to date, so it would likely require some sort of sit-down, whether it be a meet with administration or to bring it straight to council, some sort of sit-down, hi, here's the agenda, here's what's being proposed. Nothing onerous. It's just strictly that there's nothing more frustrating than hearing people making decisions and you can speak an opinion, but you can't put your vote into it. It's very, very harsh.
So am I hearing that you would foresee the process being that when the agenda was circulated, if there was anything that was requiring some direction of this council, it would likely come to this council?
It would come to council whether we're going to have to fly the first one to see how it works, potentially. If it's simple enough to have it, that here's the email, here's what's going on, anything cause you some panic, gather it back by paper. If there is,
Right.
if there is need to sit down, then it would necessitate that discussion.
Right.
And then obviously there may be, if there's anything totally off the wall controversial that emerges, then as a voting member, you've got the right to stand up and say, hey, I can't deal with this, or if it makes sense, you don't want to hold up the process and may require some initiative, taking some personal initiative.
Right. So, because
Ultimately,
that speaks to exactly my concern is, if it were me, I wouldn't want to be there, basically speaking for council if I didn't know what parameters I was working within. So that provides me some comfort. I am a little bit troubled that we are, that the characterization is that it is a political decision or political issues. I want it to get to the point that this is actually environmental and technical issues. And so it made a lot of sense to me to have representative from administration for those reasons. That said, there's nothing stopping that administrative support, and I would hope that it would be called upon. But I am looking forward to a point is, if this makes sense for Canmore, that it gets to a point that we are dealing with what's a good decision on a technological, economical, and environmental basis, as opposed to which way the political winds are blowing. I'll support the amendment, but I would expect that that we're going to be consulted on, and rather than after the fact finding out that we've agreed to something that we hadn't discussed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, speaking to the amendment then that's on the overhead, I share similar concerns. It has to be clear that in this role, Councillor Russell or Sanford are representing the town of Canmore and not the Waste Management Commission. And I know it's difficult to be changing hats in these various commissions and boards. So, but with that cautionary note, I'll support the amendment. Councillor Russell, did you want to speak to the amendment?
Gives you any personal comfort, you register for the annual general meeting as councillor or as director of the Waste Management Commission. That would give you a whole lot more comfort, because then we would be registering as town of Canmore representative, not director from the Waste Management Commission.
So then arguably you might be there voting for the town of Canmore and somebody else from the Waste Management Commission would be there? No.
Someone else may be there from the Waste Management Commission, but they would not be voting.
Okay. Is there further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Then back to the motion as amended. Discussion on that, which is nothing like that anymore. We all know what we're voting on now, the amended motion. Is there discussion on that motion? Seeing Councillor Krausert?
I'll float out an amendment just to make it crystal clear. Our conversation that we just had is, I haven't written it down yet, just to tack on the end within parameters as approved by council.
Want to speak to that?
It's the same thing as I said before. Just make perfectly clear that, and I would want this if I were that representative, because it covers my butt, quite frankly, if it were me, that voting and signing is only done within the realms that council has already spoken to and approved. So we've approved being signatories to this memorandum of understanding. I think it's fairly clear from that we're happy with that, as long as there's no other financial obligations. So, for example, if you were to go to vote and that there was some sort of financial obligation coming forward, you wouldn't be able to vote on that unless it came back to council to consider that. And I think it's obvious. Councillor Russell and Councillor Sanford spoke to, so I think that's understood. But it's best to have, since our conversations are not recorded in minutes, it's best to have our understanding in the motion. So that's why I would put forward that amendment.
Councillor Sanford?
Further to that, if you wanted to, we could circulate the minutes or the agendas from the upcoming AGM. But I think the kind of voting that we would be asked to contribute to is to, for instance, take back this, should this be referred to councils? So to bring back information, I think, is the kind of voting that we would be asked to do, because we don't have the authority to vote on, to contribute funds on behalf of the municipality. That would have to come to a council vote anyway. So the kinds of voting we would be doing is more or less bringing the rest of council up to speed on whatever the issue is, whether it's the type of technology, whether it's the siting of the facility. I think we would have to be bringing that information back to council. So I don't think it would be a problem to circulate the AGM agenda in advance to determine those parameters.
Speaking to this amendment, I don't think I can support it. Would require then Councillor Russell to get a formal vote of this council prior to going to the AGM and giving his vote. And in a sense, while I appreciate the main point that I wanted to make was that would be representing Town of Canmore, not the Waste Management Commission. But this is very similar then to suggesting that yourself would need to clear everything with council for a vote at least regional transit, or when I go to the board meetings for CRP. I mean, I wouldn't run the entire agenda past this council for verification of how my vote would go. Certainly any issues that came to the CRP board that were significant and it might impact the town, I would bring back to council. So I'm just a little nervous about that. Yeah.
I think it's a little bit different when I'm on the Transit Commission or you're on the Housing Authority. You're wearing your Housing Authority hat, or I'm wearing my Transit Commission hat. If they're representing the Town of Canmore, it has to be within those parameters. It just looks like it's carte blanche without any parameters, and it could be within parameters as previously approved by council. It's just to be clear. I can live with the other way. I just think that this provides greater clarity. I don't actually think it does require coming back to get clarity on absolutely every agenda item. I like Councillor Sanford's suggestion. I think Councillor Russell had mentioned as well. Circulate materials. If there's any concerns, we can bring it up and it can decide if something needs to come back to council or not. But
Okay. Beating a dead horse, maybe. Is there other discussion on Councillor Kraussert's amendment? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the amendment then. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's defeated with Councillors Crowsert, McCallum, and Sanford in support. Back to the main motion. The red words. Is there further discussion on that motion as amended? See none, then calling the question on the motion as amended by Councillor Sanford. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Whew. Who would have thunk that one would go south like that? Okay, we're moving on to item G2. Oh, unless we want to take a quick...
Need a little break?
Okay, we'll take a quick break. We all got to get over... Dr. Cottle.
Hello. Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. I'm just here with a verbal update, so I don't need any motions. And that's good. I'm here to talk just briefly about Liveable Canmore and council's engagement around affordability. So a little bit first about Liveable Canmore. Livability defined. Livability, or the notion of livability, is the sum of the factors that add up to a community's quality of life. And it includes, but is not limited to, safety and security, affordable and appropriate housing and transportation options, supportive community features and services. It includes the built and the natural environment, and things like cultural, entertainment, and recreation possibilities. So in terms of Liveable Canmore, one of the things, we make lots of efforts to make and or keep Canmore livable for all. It's one of the things that the municipality does quite consistently. One of the things that we want to do for 2016 to try to see how it goes is to highlight certain projects, services, programs, and different engagement opportunities that address livability in a new and a different way than we have before. So we want to focus, the larger focus is on council's vision and the priorities that you set for the next 3 years. And what we are trying to do is situate individual projects into the larger frame. So to show how one project that we're doing actually fits into the larger vision and the bigger idea of livability and in particular affordability in Canmore. So when thinking about Liveable Canmore, one of the things that we've been doing is to look at what in particular in 2016 are we doing and what areas of livability are we addressing. So I'm about to go through a list, and it's not to say this is all that we're doing around livability or the only things that we'll do. It's just how we've been categorizing it and thinking about it as we look at what we're doing in 2016. So what this means is largely this is a project that's being led by Adam and I. So we're trying to create a bit of a visual identity or a brand that we manage around livability and Liveable Canmore. We'll have a web presence around it. We'll craft narratives or ways of talking about different components of what Liveable Canmore is, and work with other departments to provide them with resources, templates, ads, notices, information to help package what we're doing in a new and different way and try to coordinate some of our efforts, especially around community engagement where that's happening. So in terms of Liveable Canmore, one of the elements that we're focusing on in 2016 is strong social connections. And two of the things that we're doing around social connections in 2016 are the community social development strategy that's being led by the Community Social Development Department, and some of the redesign at the rec center. Even though that's ultimately about taking care of a facility, we know that the rec center is a place where strong social connections occur. So those are examples of two very different independent projects that happen with very little overlap or connection between them, that both fit under an umbrella of Liveable Canmore around social connections. Another thing that we're really focusing on in 2016 is safe and comfortable streets for all. And we have been focusing and doing this work, again, for quite some time, but there's a continuation of it in 2016, which includes bringing on of local transit and improvements to the regional transit, pedestrian and cycling improvements, additional signals at Main Street, potentially some work on the Bow Bridge corridor, and parking strategies for downtown Canmore. Another category of Liveable Canmore in 2016 is around stewardship of the environment. There'll be implementation of two plans led by the Planning Department, the Open Space and Trails Plan, and the Human Use Management Review. And some of those things may also fall under the element or the idea of Liveable Canmore. Another element of Liveable Canmore is the notion of wanting to make sure that we're doing a good job of informing our citizens on key issues. So we're going to be launching in June an online budget tool. And it's not done or ready yet. I still have to make a few edits, but I did just want to show council. So we're working on this online tool that'll go out with tax notices that helps to inform citizens of where their tax dollar goes and allows them to give some input that will be collated for the 2017 budget process. So there's a bit of a description of your tax dollars and where they go, and then how the system works. And then here you can enter in the amount of your assessment, which you'll be getting in the mail, and then it actually shows you how much, given that if your house is worth $750,000, I think that says $372 a year, then goes to protective services. So there's a description of protective services. You have an opportunity to give some input on if you'd like to see your taxes increased or potentially decreased, and then if you do, what service changes you'd like to see given that. So this is an example of a new thing that we're trying this year to help ensure that citizens are well informed about their tax dollars and where they go. Yeah, you bet.
So the information that you get there, when people give you feedback, what do you do with that?
We will collate it, and then we will create a report, and anybody who gives their email address, we will give the report back to them, and then it will come to council as part of the 2017 budget process as you're working on the next budget. Okay? So those are some of the things that we're doing in 2016 around making sure our citizens are well informed. And then the last category for 2016 is quality housing in great neighborhoods for all. So there's work being done, as you know, around secondary suites. And then what I'm primarily here to talk about tonight is an engagement project around council's focus on affordability and the priority of affordable housing. So again, those are the idea of Liveable Canmore is just a way to try to help frame some of our projects in a new and different way, and we're trying that in 2016. And one of the first things that we'll do to launch that is this engagement strategy. So the engagement project recognizes that affordability is a key component of livability. And one of council's goals for 2016 was to create a process for engaging the community on your three-year priorities and the focus on affordability, with one of the fundamental questions being, how can we create affordable housing and maintain community character? So coming this spring, we've just hired the Whistler Center for Sustainability, and they're starting to work with us on implementing an engagement strategy around that fundamental question. In April and May, we'll have several engagement opportunities for the community, including an online survey, community conversations. People can host kitchen table pizza parties, and they'll have a bit of a workbook that they have to work through. We'll use public spaces for idea sharing in some new ways that we've never done before, and we'll have housing workshops. And all this will culminate in a final report that will be presented back to council before your summer break. So mostly I just wanted to come tonight to announce that work is started and will be coming soon. We're just beginning to create a plan. One of the consultants from the Center for Sustainability will be here in mid-March, to meet with council, and we'll create specific details, dates, and locations at that time. But I'm really looking forward to supporting council in this project, and just wanted to officially let you know that it's happening and see if you have any questions.
So I just have one clarification or question for clarification around the public engagement and talking about what change in neighborhoods may look like. We're not going to focus, it's going to be a high-level focus rather than we're not going to reopen previous decisions and...
That's right. This is about high-level conversations in the community around affordability and affordable housing in neighborhoods. So we are not talking about specific projects that have already been approved by council or ones that might be coming. This is a high-level conversation and a different kind of community conversation to get it out of some of the details of specific projects. Correct.
Thank you. Councillor Crowsert.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for the presentation, Dr. Cotto. And would you be able to provide a copy of this presentation to us?
Of course, you bet. My pleasure.
There's some great points for reference.
Yep, happy to. You don't have to make any decisions. I'm just telling you tonight. That's it.
Purely informational. Are there any other questions then for administration at this time? Well, I, for one, have to say I'm looking forward to the engagement part of it, particularly. We've really wanted to find a better way of engaging the community on some of these higher level issues and our priorities. So I think this could be very positive for the town. Thanks for taking the lead on that.
I should have given kudos to the Lisas, DeSoto and Brown, who we actually, when we put out the RFP for community engagement specialists, we got 20 proposals back, which is fantastic. And the Lisas help review the finalists and choose the winner. So the Lisas.
The Lisa team. Okay. So are you Lisa number one? Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And with that, I will move that the council go in camera. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Bye-bye.